Раз, два, три. Да. Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Well, in the Soviet times, people said that people in the Soviet Union know two things, medicine and economics. It may seem strange that an economic university were conducting an academic session on medicine. But it's not because of the Soviet period legacy, though I derive from the Soviet period. But we decided to unite economics, medical, and IT together. And academician Beregovych will moderate our session, and he is our great friend. He is a great person. Being short, let me only say that this is one of the most important issues for science and education. The university is going strategically. And now I would like to give the floor to Ksenia Ekimova. You have the floor, please. Dear colleagues, dear participants of the academic session. This has always been one of the traditions of Plekhanov University. Of the year of its anniversary, we have academic sessions on the most relevant issues of our country. 116-year anniversary of our university, and we decided to dwell on medical IT. Clearly, Plekhanov University is one of the greatest economic university in the country, and the guests today are great, which is a great honor for us. So the strategy of our university is educating our students to analyze big data, AI, IT technologies, combating issues and targets of real estate and real commercial issues. Our professionals are educated to be with good scientific and academical fundament, but we are trying to make them be practical. For that, we use IT technology and artificial intellect to support taking managerial solutions. Let me bring about an example. Annually, about 500 invasive coronographic surgeries are conducted in Russia, but half of them in vain. And provided one procedure costs 150,000 rubles, what does it highlight? Economic loss are about 37 billion rubles and more annually. Experts are sure that artificial intellect would allow systems for automatized dealing with big data, and the medical doctors will only have to take the clinical decision. That will take time from them and also will have less losses and will spend less for that. So we'd like you to touch upon time burden of our medical staff. But let's not forget issues when the patient needs human doctors and their decisions. But these decisions should be supported by the data and technology we have today. The university cannot limit to just academic issues. And through deep science, we need to improve our students and to improve the training procedure. This is the time I can boast, really, because I can see here my colleagues, the people I'm proud of. And the most important thing for this interaction of students and teachers and branches is the consortium of IT technology. Plekhanov University is part of Priority 2030 program. Also, Russian Academy of Continuous Education are their scientific Institute of Biochemistry, Arikhovich Institute, and Plekhanov University. After 1 year of this collaboration, for this Priority 2030, we won a grant up to 2026. And this is good sum of money, believe me, and the university is obliged to do our best to work with it. So our target is decreasing risk in simultaneous use of different drugs, and we'll discuss it today. There is one issue which is most interesting for our teaching staff is new training programs. And together with the Russian Academy of Continuous Education, we work them out. So we are here to enhance digital links. If our medical workers, strategically, we want to create a scientific lab for medical IT. We can see how fundamental science is developing. We can see how turbulent the processes are our society lives in. So we understand that we should be aimed at being interdisciplinary. And that is why we have a lab for medical IT here at a university for economics. So we're here to prepare to train IT specialists for medicine. Dear participants of the academic session, dear students, and I would like once again to highlight that our students of Foresight Group are something we're proud of. So welcome on behalf of Rector Lobanov and of all the training staff. So wish all of you subtle discussion and great pleasure of collaboration. And I would like to give the floor back to our moderator. Distinguished colleagues, dear friends, the fact that we've met today is not accidental, and we've been prepared to it for several years. And we've started a consortium today. 15 institutions will be part of it, and Plekhanov University is the operator. You know why? Maybe it's because of great team. And looking at my colleagues in the panel today, I can see that each one is great and has their own specialization. Each speaker will tell about it. But the point is that everyone is a great professional, but in their own cluster. And we needed somebody or someone to unite everyone in one cluster. Because our target is to give a tool for doctors, like a magic stick. So all the doctors, they study for 6 years at the university, and then internship, and then residency, and they get to the patients 50,000 registered drugs, more than 1,000 guidelines. Just try to imagine, dear students and dear colleagues, how all this can be memorized. It's impossible. So our goal is to give the specialist recommendations how to take decision. Yes, It's the medical doctor who takes decision, and the responsibility, well, the legal one is also there. But you need to have something which helps you to take the solution in front of your eyes. So our session of today is only part of the directions we're dealing with. Ksenia has told you already that you've got a grant, that we're going working. I wanted to have 20 or 30 branches, but some other people told me that it was too much. So today we're going to have the speakers, and these are not all people that work for us. But I would like to invite Professor Sychov to speak about theory and practice. Thank you.
Глубоко уважаемые коллеги, можно я
Dear colleagues,
будет удобнее?
I hope you can see my slides. So, this is quite an unusual event for me, for the first time ever, and it's a great honor that this kind of a medical conference is held here in Plekhanov University of Economics. I would like to thank all the colleagues who are present here and all the students, and I would like to be short. From the point of view of a medical scientist, a pharmacologist, and from the point of view of medicine, I will try to tell you about solutions which help to make decisions in medicine more safe. Let me quote Professor Votchel, who was the founder of pharmacology, clinical pharmacology here. He worked here in Moscow, and he was an internal medicine specialist. And he was the first to say that pharmacology should be taught to medical students. He said we live in the times when surgery becomes more and more safe, and internal medicine becomes more and more dangerous. He was right to say that we had more than 30,000 medical drugs and a lot of variations. There are more than 800 international patent numbers. And also we have a trend to medical substitution. Unfortunately, medical drugs can be not only beneficial but dangerous because of misuse, and this can lead to adverse events. But this is preventable, also thanks to IT technologies. Speaking about mistakes, well, they are quite common, and especially in patients with polymorbidities, more than one disease, the issue of adverse events, medical complications happen quite frequently, and this is a burden. So we have a program now aimed at having less mistakes like this. So Roszdravnadzor, our supervisory body, is the body who registers more than 30 serious adverse events. And this is only what is reported by doctors. But if we monitor everything more thoroughly, then the amount of these kind of reactions are much more, many times more. The pictures you can see here are not just pictures from the internet. These are real cases. And physicians can be great, know everything, know the guidelines, have a lot of experience, but sometimes they prefer not to go in accordance with the guidelines. And look at the deviations here for atrial fibrillation. Every 5 patient has inpatients with atrial fibrillation and every fifth with deep vein thrombosis. We have Article 37 of our Constitution, and it is absolutely important to go using the principles of evidence-based medicine, using the guidelines. In this case, the prognosis for patients improves much more, and there are a lot of data for acute coronary syndrome, practically for all the diseases. So we want to increase the adherence of our medical doctors to guidelines. And big data and IT systems is a good way out here. So we now have digital guidelines. And this allows to get the data from the core system automatically. And if something is wrong, the medical doctor can get some alerts. And the evidence-based approaches are there. So this is only a pioneer solution for this hospital. And have a look what happens when they introduce the system of support of taken decision. It's not only the adherence of the medical doctors which has improved, but you can see the figures, how much the prognosis improved and how much the death rate decreased. So, in several years, we hope to introduce the system more. Also, we tested the system for thromboembolic disease prevention, for embolism prevention. And look here. The figures are so good. The mortality decreased more than 2 times. Also, we tested the system for anti-thrombotic drugs for patients with deep vein prognosis. Also, it reduced the costs and it improved the outcome. And also, the amount of mistakes and deviations from instruction regarding dosage also has improved a lot. There are more targets which the medical IT helps. And again, it's adherence. When you transfer patients from one medical institution to a different one, very often documents get lost, and thanks to big data, we can get all the information about all the patients, which resulted in improving the adherence and also improving the outcome. There is one more trend of the medicine of today, and this is personalized or targeted medicine. And here, new technologies allow the medical doctor to have a differentiated approach to patients, and acute coronary syndrome and anticoagulants is a good example here. So the approach became more personalized, and the prognosis of the patients and the outcome has improved. Speaking about genetic factors and possible complications, again, we can use machine-based training, and laboratory resistance of clopidogrel for patients with acute coronary system is really useful. It can assess in the patient both genetic and non-genetic factors, helping the doctor to be more personalized. And we use both linear and non-linear models. So we pack all this in our technical machines, and Mikhail Zastrozhin, Associate Professor of Pharmacology, Chair, and my former student, he didn't just invent a detailed system for psychotropic drugs, and he just develop the whole system, which increase the outcome and safety regarding the efficacy and regarding adverse events. Speaking about the decision taken, the time was shorter and the efficacy was longer. And this is a meta-analysis which, again, highlights the evidence-based approach if we use all this. Certainly, we need to work together with our medical specialists and also to train students. And these programs, we introduce different stages of university studies. And we have, together with Plekhanov Academy, a lot of programs for that. We are leaders. We fulfill more than 4,000 programs, and our power is being interdisciplinary and being together. We work in cluster, not only in Moscow, but also around the country. Speak about the competence to use and to work out different informational technologies are really helpful. And we've started introducing them, speaking about safety. Our academy also launched a congress, and drug safety was one of the sessions there. So let me conclude. This slide highlights once again that IT in medicine really helps not just the doctor to take the right decision, but improves the whole procedure, starting from the recipe and up to the final procedure, making therapy more targeted, more safe, and more patient-oriented, more personalized, and more efficient for our patients. So IT should be a cycle. It should be a closed IT for drug therapy management. And all this should be integrated in the vertical medical system, too. In this case, in this world, let me highlight academic Vochinov again. It's better to use less drugs, only the ones which are really important. And dear friends, welcome to be trained at our academy, including the programs we do together with Plekhanov University. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so very much, Professor, for your great introduction. And it's good that we are now in the issues you were dealing with, and you understand now what we mean. And I would like to ask my neighbor, academician Chetverushkin, to give his presentation. The floor is yours, Professor, please. Dear friends, can you hear me? Good. I'm sorry, I'm not a medical person. I'm a mathematician. So sorry, my dear medical colleagues, if I say something wrong regarding medicine. But I have something to do with the medicine. First of all, I'm a patient, and all my relatives, all my family are medical people. Several generations of medical people are there in my family. So I'm there, not a stranger. Some technical issue? These are not my slides yet, but I will start so far.
Да, есть она у меня есть тут. Мою презентацию так не поставили, это не моя презентация. Значит, я просто хотел бы начать вот.
Let me start saying that digital approach to medicine and digitalization exists and is developing. And this is what we can see in our outpatients, clinics and hospitals. Sometimes our medical doctors look more at their computers than at us. About 20 years ago, I was in Houston, and there was something which impressed me. There was a big screen, and there was a surgery in heart there. And that was a video of a surgery which actually took place in a different classroom, in a different room. But the students could see everything. That seemed really impressive for me, and I believe that that was really very beneficial for the students. Now we have this kind of technologies here. So technology is our instrument. And it really is helpful for our doctors. But I would like to highlight the supercomputer, which could help the doctors, but at a different level. Let's wait for a little while until my slides are there. But let me see once again, supercomputer is something which is used everywhere, also in oil and gas industry, with current too. Sometimes in oil and gas, you can skip the mixture of water and sand and see just the parameters which are important for oil production or gas production. Actually, this current, and this is the oil and gas term, you can use only once, and then it is thrown away. And we're trying to make it using digital technologies. So we have a small pot of oil, and we digitalize it, and then we calculate the penetration of oil in different parameters and different environment. So the calculation is quite complex here. 300,000 nodules, and there is geometry and physics and all this stuff. But what about medicine? If you allow me, I would like to bring about some cases on medicine. But where are my slides? I've sent them, definitely.
О, вот что-то уже из этой оперы, да. Да, да. Вот.
Oh, it looks a bit like my slides. Yeah, it's my slides. So let's look at epilepsy. This is the encephalogram, the curve of an epileptic patient. We work together with Burdenko Hospital. Well, every patient has a lot of electrodes, and there are several of them. And you can see the curve, the waves, and some minutes before the event, well, nurses can see and doctors can see that it is going to happen, and they are there with emergency aid. Supercomputer is part of it. And this is one of the examples I witnessed myself at our institute. Next slide, please.
Вот теперь хотел бы о нутрициологии поговорить.
Let's speak about nutrition medicine. So our patients are subdivided into 3 groups from 0 to 99. Unfortunately, we don't have older patients. But we subdivide our patients in many groups regarding age, region, income, religion, chronic diseases, a lot of parameters, and also they are subdivided regarding diet, kinds of diet. So it turns out that if we use 10 petaflop system for treating and for looking at the whole population of the globe, we can see what kind of diet should and is useful and rational for our people. And it's not only regarding medicine, patients and doctors, but regarding economic planning. And it's also good to plan production of different kind of products. It can be food, it can be drugs, a lot of things. Thank you for the slides. And the next slide, please. And I would like to stop at docking, which is drug production. Any medical drug is a difficult combination of protein and many other things. And the binding features are really important here. And all this should be calculated. And here, the supercomputer works too. And it's not our university, it's Lomonosov University. And this petaflop machine also works there. Here you can see genomics, and you know that for every person we can create a genomic map regarding all the features we've discussed today. And for this, a supercomputer is required. But if it's only one, about 10 teraflop, and a private lab, you can for 200,000 rubles, provide a genome map for somebody who is ready to pay for this. This is what you can start right away if you can afford it. On the other hand, some people pay about 100,000 rubles a year for a gym, so this probably can be affordable for somebody because it's not less important. Dear friends, you are economics specialists. I think you will assess it better, but you've got the idea. Speaking about pandemic, now we know even more that we need to use supercomputer to modulate different consequences of different events. So we have a system like this in Houston, for instance, about 16 teraflop. It's not really big, but it's very convenient because it was good, and it has shown itself very good for assessing pandemic and the outcomes of the pandemic. This work we've conducted together with Snezhinsk Nuclear Center. We have two of them, actually, which we work with. And they modulate different nuclear reactions. And you can see the picture. of nuclear reactions, how it emerges, how some chemical elements disappear, which is natural for this kind of processes. And all this is quite familiar at nuclear physics. Academician Rakovana had an idea to modulate COVID as a chain reaction, but to use, instead of elements, different groups of patients, pensioners, students, working people, subdividing them, and then calculate the chain reaction and COVID pandemics and the spread of epidemics. It seems good, but the reaction of atoms are quite familiar. It's much more difficult regarding collaboration of people. Well, we can get some data for how many people get from Moscow to Novosibirsk by plane. But how can we calculate how many people go around cities and towns every day? So we started to treat non-structured information, usual internet, social media. So more or less near 10% deviation. We found out who goes where, who travels where, different behavioral patterns. And by the way, we were not bad in forecasting waves of the pandemic. We also predicted what will happen if we are too strict, too tough in time of pandemics. And our work together with Snyazhinsk Research Institute was appraised as the best scientific work in 2021. Concluding, let me once again say that well, today we've made and are still making a huge step in IT technologies, and supercomputer should be and will be in medicine because it's an instrument for a new level of knowledge and information. But my dear colleagues, medical professors, there is only one danger to be not human, to go from the human. I mean, it's important that the patient speaks with the doctor, a physical human doctor, and gets some kind of psychological relief. So this combination of human and non-human is important. Thank you so very much. Before the next speaker is preparing, let me comment on it just for a little while. Professor, you know a lot. But you are surrounded by different kind of people. Let me bring about an example. I was going to Bakulev Medical and Scientific Research Institute, and there was a conference. And one of the speakers said, you know, many years ago, doctors were different. Many years ago, they were more human, more personal. And then I went to a different medical university, and they told me, you haven't undergone a general checkup. Let's do it. And she studied me, and it took 2 hours, and I had a report. And I got so much information, and this is the opportunity of today. One more example. I've heard a presentation about pandemic, and this is all good, but there is a micro world of microbes. You remember the Wuhan strain, because that was the very first COVID virus. And you know, the microbes changed and they developed a different virus. And for that, we need big data. And, Professor, the floor is yours. My name is Philippe Pallier. I'm a cardiologist. I work at the Medical Center of Cardiology, Chazov Institute. My presentation of today will be practical. It will be about our experience of taking decisions. But we're discussing social aspects here today. So I have a question. Do you know what do we mean by health and what the World Health Organization means by it? Do you know the definition? So they say that it's just physical well-being and not just lacking in defects, physical defects. This is what the World Health Organization highlights. So it's not enough to treat people. People need to become healthy in contact with their doctors, but on their own too. And this contact between a doctor and a patient, this collaboration, is really of paramount importance. I remember several years ago, telemedicine was discussed, and sometimes really aggressively. I remember there were international companies with robots which approached the patient's beds, and the doctor may be somewhere else in their room or on holiday in Hawaii, talking with the patient through the robot, which has the robot's face. And I thought at that moment that it could be not comfortable for a patient to speak just with a robot, but on the other hand, the patient can change the robot's face to see, I don't know, an Afro-American doctor instead of a European one, or a woman, or anyone, to feel comfortable. So this is a different approach. We're living in the world where a lot of money is given to combat cardiovascular diseases and on digital approach. And the target is to reduce mortality and to increase the lives of our patients. This is the graph for the COVID period. Now things are better. But when we discussed what shall we do and what instruments we need for that, we concluded that guidelines are and should be one of the instruments. Some years ago, guidelines were kind of recommendations for us doctors, and now they are part of the law. And these are not just words. There have been a lot of trials which proved that working in accordance with the guidelines really significantly reduces the risks of death from cardiovascular issues or just overall death. So we have programs for development of the regions where guidelines are important, and monitoring and control. But how can we do it? The question is not easy, isn't it? It's easy to think about it, to describe things, but we need to get to the level of each and every patient. So what do we need? We need a technology which should combine different things. Number one, control. Number two, taking a decision of how to treat a patient, what to administer, we need to assess a lot of parameters. And here you can see more than 60 of them. And this helps the doctor to take their decision. Unfortunately, the doctors do not always have all these parameters in front of them. So how can they take their decision without this primary information? We don't know that. So the first target of us is controlling the quality of investigation, tests and checkups, and the quality of the information the doctor has. The next stage is treatment administration. And here we need to have algorithms. And it's the doctor who takes decision, definitely, but using the algorithms. I remember I traveled to London, and there was a private hospital there. And the doctors administered any treatment, and the pharmacologist, the clinical pharmacologist, was to sign any administration. Otherwise, the patients couldn't get even one pill. So this is a different kind of control on the human level. We're trying to include it in the machinery. This is how the patient's medical records look like in the digital system. And you can see how the system proposes some kind of therapy. We've analyzed digital records of the patients. We try to understand whether this database is ready to take this solution. Of 216,000 digital records, only 11 were to be analyzed further. Because the data was not good enough, and it was problematic to assess all the data, and those patients were risky. So about 50,000 patients were underestimated, and that is why they could die or fall ill more severely. This is what is going on now because of lack of data. But we want to prolong our patients' lives and to reduce their risks. This is possible reducing the target figures and by keeping them the same level. All the guidelines have some indications which are important for patients post-infarction or post-other vascular pathologies. And there is specific information for that, which is absolutely necessary. It turned out that in the majority of cases, the doctors didn't refer it. They didn't have it.
В перспективе, в разверстке в несколько недель.
We compared data for different weeks, different months. So it turned out that there is no stability here. It's not that this target level in patients goes up and improves. No. On the other hand, the therapy doesn't work on the patients good enough, and the risks go up all the time. Speaking about arterial pressure, again, there are some specific parameters which are absolutely vital to assess the case. And the majority of patients didn't have that information. In the medical records, they didn't achieve the target level, and they really had problems with their health. And the same thing regarding drugs. the majority of patients post myocardial infarction don't have the data supporting that they receive the therapy, which is crucial for them. So our conclusion was that we need to develop digital trace for the primary data we have in the patient's records, the digital ones. And the most important thing is that all these primary documents, the cards, should be the same so that we could analyze them. There are other challenges. We don't want only to help our medical doctors, but we should develop the culture of using digital sources to have and to use and to treat different data. Also, everything should be certified. And the major challenges here are logistics and money. Because money is important everywhere. We need to get the system, we need to license it, we need to update it all the time that it works. These are our major challenges today. But I really hope that consortiums like the one we have will help us to go on, because when medical doctors and economists and scientists work together, this is the best collaboration, absolutely supportive. Thank you so very much, Professor. You've raised a very important issue. All the federal centers have to be licensed and undergo audit, etc., and we have reports, and we can see that in the regions about 85% of patients are either under investigated, or they are not investigated enough, or something is wrong there. So our target is not just to control the doctors like Big Brother, but we want to help you and help people. And for that, standard is of paramount importance. This issue is really significant and requires solutions, and we'll go and find it. One more thing about guidelines. You know that every guideline has a team of experts responsible for that. And before it becomes the rule, every item of it is discussed so many times. But there are still doctors who say, I have experience, I'm a smart person, I've been trained so much. But Philip, you are right. Let's examine the patient. Let's look what we can do, look at the guideline, and take the decision. By the way, in many countries, if you don't stick to the guidelines, you first have problems and then you're fired. Thank you so very much, Professor, once again. And I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, and this is Professor Vladimir Paroyko. He is a great person. He is a guru. I remember that that in the 80s we had 30 new drugs annually, but today we have less. Why? He will share with us.
Спасибо большое за приглашение.
Thank you so very much for the opportunity of speaking in front of the people I normally don't speak for. But it's good that we don't have limits, but we go interdisciplinary, combating barriers. So where is my slides? Yeah, thank you. I'm representing a team of scientific and research for biomedicine, and I deal with construction of drugs. And we'll try to share with you in easy words what we do, why. Today, to create a medical drug, we have to analyze big data. Some speakers have said today that we have about 30 drugs, more than 100 of them. But speaking about the real amount of pharmaceutical substances, there are about 12 to 15,000 of them. So why do we have so many registered drugs? It can be different drugs and different kinds of drugs. There is a classification for diseases, and for them we have drugs. And we target at molecular, which are called targets, and we target them to get the therapeutic effect we know. Let's go deeper. Speaking about active substances, we have several thousands of targets, millions of ligands, and we go to combat with the diseases which don't have treatment for today. If we go still deeper, we can synthesize a lot of compounds. There are many millions of them, and even billions. Some of them exist, some of them we're trying to combine. Still, there is a question regarding classification and the diseases they can treat. So using the data of today and the technologies of today will probably result in a different classification and change the paradigm of treatment. We can go even deeper and what are the possible combinations? Well, there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of targets, but I am not going to dwell on it now. But clearly, only bio-IT, medical IT, is the only tool we can use to analyze this data, because there is so much information. Probably remember Journal of Chemical Informational Modeling, and its editor once asked a provocative question. He said, many people ask, is there any drug which was founded with the help of computer? And, well, the majority of people would say, no, not one. And after that, they can be calm and go to their labs. But he said, we can change this question. Is there any drug created without in silico assessment? Today, no, because computerized technologies are used at all the stages of developing and production of the drugs. So this we can call design based on targets like docking, dynamics, or based on ligand. Also, there is a network pharmacy which assesses difficult processes of working the drugs in the body and the body's reaction. My lab has been dealing for a long time with design based on ligand, for more than 30 years, really, because we started to work in the Soviet Union. There was a system of the state registration of chemical combinations and compounds. In those times, people were sure that there can be one institution and all the data can be referred there, and the computer can assess what we can expect on any kind of compound and what kind of test should be performed on it. So at the end of 80s, beginning of 90s, we joined this issue, and we started working on prediction of activity of spectrum of substances. And in 1992, the first article was issued. In 1989, we created the first in the world web resource. Oh no, that was 1999. It prognosed the biological activity of a substance based on the structure of it. I could tell you a lot about my 30-year work. So today we have more than 40 web services, and we have a lot of users from Russia and other countries, BRICS countries and other countries. We have a lot of users, really. They don't only include the forecast for the biological activity spectrum, but also drug metabolism, interdrug interaction, and Dmitry Sychov has highlighted, and other issues like adverse events, side effects, toxicity, and so on. And you can see all this on the internet and use it. So how do you do the forecast? You can have the formula, the structure, chemical one. It is transferred into descriptors, then it is assessed on bioactivity, and at the end the user gets the list of activity with plus or minus. It exists or it doesn't. So they prognose more than 80,000, and 34% we are right. So we can select the substances which could have the activity we need of hundreds of thousands, and we save a lot of time and money. You've mentioned economy here, and it's really expensive. 12 years of trials, more than 10,000 of combinations and substances, and the efficacy is 1% and sometimes even less. So selecting the possibility is really crucial economically. Clearly, there are some limits. The structure we have from the very beginning has to be monocomponent, doesn't have to have some particular atoms, and no more than 250 atomic mass should be its weight. So what compounds do we use for training? More than 1.6 million famous pharmaceutical active substances. And the parameters are used for that, for better work and for better forecast. Let's look here. This is a prognosis for pyrrandopril. It's really interesting. It is a Janssen-turning format inhibitor, which was founded in academician Ryukhovich lab at our research institute. It is very good for enzymology, and it is one of the first hypertensive drugs. And you can see here that its hypertensive activity can be forecasted. But pyrrandopril and some other substances of this class can have nootropic action. We prognosed it, and that was supported by different investigators and also in clinical trials. Our web service today is not unique. So we compare it with other digital resources. And this slide highlights our comparison we conducted in 2017. So it turned out that our web service is no less and sometimes even better than other web services present today. We thought that combination of our service with others can improve the prognosis, but no. So we do our own investigation so far, interpreting the results. Professor Alexander Lakunin, academician who is in charge of Bio-IT Lab in Pirogov Institute, and also he works for us. So he created a software, Pharma Expert is its name. It helps to find out the connections, interpret it for pharmacology, find out combinations with the activity we want, and also analyzed interaction of drugs. Prandopril was my first example. And the same way, our European colleagues made repositioning of chlorothalidine. It is a famous antibiotic. The prognosis was that it could be used for inflammatory bowel diseases. And the experiments in the lab proved that there are mechanisms which can be good for this kind of action. One more example. We did it with our Indian friends and Plekhanov Institute. Asparagus aspera is a medicinal herb, and it is used quite commonly in medicine, but not as antidepressant. We prognosed that phytocomponents of this herb can have some antidepressant effect. So there was a lab, and on animals we proved it, our colleagues proved it, and we published an article. So Piramal Pharma, the licensors of our software, they looked for oxydoxydase inhibitors of their own molecular collection, more than 60,000, 32 hits on prognosis. They selected, we tested 23, and we proved that 3 of them have this activity, which is similar to the action of allopurinol. One more company, Oriflame, our licensors. They were looking for mechanism of N-acetyl aspartate as an anti-aging drug. The prognosis here was with very small figures, but experimentally they were supported, and the article was published in the International Journal of Cosmetic Sciences. Today, we cannot omit COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, our European colleagues announced a challenge, JetBalo molecular against COVID span challenge. So billions of molecules combating COVID-19. They said, if you include in this challenge and create this kind of molecule, you can create it and get $1 million. So we decided to take part in it. So the target was to screen billion or more molecules for 3 or more targets. For SARS-CoV-2, and getting a list of 20 candidates for testing. 130 teams from different countries proposed more than 600,000 compounds. As a result, 28 active substances were found. So we screened in silico 1 billion molecular and for 4 targets, and we were one of the 20 teams, the compounds of which were selected for testing. One of the 28 molecules was the ones selected by us. And soon there will be an article of it. Unfortunately, I cannot see it on the slides. It should be there. Oh, here it is. Have a look at it. This is the article we're preparing now, and hope that soon it will be published. Since March or May until February, a long time went on. The terms were tough. We had to do it within May and June. Clearly, if we could have more time and if we could have the knowledge of COVID-19 pathogenesis we have today, our result would have been better than in those months, because every day matters today. We have a lot of compounds in the platform way to drug. They're integrated. There will be different options for the users, for resources, for activity, for pharmacological therapy, anything the investigators are interested in. Let me sum up. We've created a platform, a software to assess in silico of new medical compounds properties. We've been developing it for 30 years. Today we prognose more than 800 activities. A lot of web resources we use to find out the properties of the substances. And this complex approach helps to select the best substances for synthesis regarding their bioactive properties. I've brought about only a small part of the published experience. The point is that practically we found out a new way, and we have new indications to reposition the drugs. This work would have never been possible without the team of our lab, our former people, our students who work in different institutions and different countries, our international collaborators, or without financial support of the funds, companies, universities. Thank you for that, and thank you for your attention. Thank you so very much. Somebody wants to treat. Somebody else will find as molecular, and Professor Pitigorska, Natalia Pitigorska, will tell you what is to be done that the doctors, the medical doctors, get the drug in the long run. Dear colleagues, dear guests, we're really happy that the team has initiated this interdisciplinary consortium. Today, you can be a top-class specialist, but you can do nothing alone. You need to be supported by other specialists who have knowledge in different branches of knowledge. I am representing drug development and their lifestyle cycle. So pharma and pharmacology deals with the fact how the drug appears on the market, investigation, accompanying and production. This is what pharma does. So this interdisciplinary group, which is really important for this consortium, we, pharma specialists, have our place, and this is important. Pharma specialists are people who can speak with different people using the same language, with doctors, chemicals, engineers, mathematicians, law people, and economists. And pharma specialists can set up a target in front of any kind of specialist from any branch of the listed ones. So today, we are at a technologically development period, the fourth revolution, people call it sometimes. So today, it's impossible to live and survive without using the latest technologies. The Russian Federation, together with Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan, have a union which is called Eurasian Economical Union. So in the year 2014, that union was created for development of economics of all the member states. Also, this is an opportunity to develop this kind of scientific branches, innovation, and new technologies is something which is really important, and all this is highlighted in the treaty. There are more documents there, and you can see some of them on the slides. And this can be seen as a strategic plan for initiatives, actions for the near future and for a longer perspective. So we are creating platforms for this union so that we create systemic approach for sharing the data and sharing priorities. In autumn 2022, there was a document signed highlighting that today we need to attach more importance to economical development. For that, we need to use new technologies and to use technologies for import substitute. And biotechnologies, pharmacy, and medicine are the main priorities and the main pillars here. So, we need to find out and to create measures of international collaboration. And these digital projects of today are really helpful. And we target at creating joint database and codes. What is especially important here? In healthcare and in pharmacy and pharmacology, you can see different developments and different areas. And telecommunication, telemedicine is really important here because it really can improve efficacy everywhere in all the member states. By them, we mean development of drugs as well as creating ways of medical care, like telemedicine. What is strategic here? And we need to understand that we are part of this Eurasian integration. This integration will help us to create new instruments and provide our functioning in the future, also being part of the global economy. We need to have similar criteria for investigations, trials, for tools and innovations. Having this joint criteria, we'll be able to do more, developing new instruments, network programs, also educational programs for interdisciplinary approach. Also, vocational postgraduate training is of paramount importance today. And it's not just important to attract medical specialists for this kind of training, but other specialists, those of IT and other areas. And it's especially important today to develop this kind of curriculum with complex approach and complex management of this kind of systems. Our students today need to be and will be our professionals in several years. And our target is to train them so that they are professional not only after graduating from the university, but for 10 to 15 years. It's difficult to forecast anything today, but we can see and develop this kind of specialists, this kind of professionals. COVID-19 pandemic has pushed the development of pharmacy and pharmacology and telemedicine and IT technologies. All this is good, but this is not all. Development of education has become part of it, and this approach to education as to continuous lifelong education is what I would like to highlight once again. Today, when medical doctors, pharmacologists, pharmacists not only work, but they train, and they need to have training for license every 4 or 5 years, and this should be implied everywhere, not just in medicine or pharma. There's no other way we can develop. Today, our system of education is not enough sometimes. Our state traditionally funds fundamental scientific education, some searching ones, but practical, applied ones should be aimed at specific results, and they need funding too. Fundamental science is important, truly. But sometimes people, the society, is not ready for innovations. Maybe it's because the real sector of economy doesn't highlight its in demand. The Eurasian platforms reflect 14 areas, including medical, biotechnologies, and pharma. It's good. Still, the leaders of the country, of our country and other Eurasian Union member states, leaders and presidents highlight that still they are not ready to transfer to the next level, and there is nothing and no one to assess it. So to assess the product, from the very beginning to the very end. The TRA method is usually used. Rosatom and Russian railroads have started to use it. Pharma hasn't started using this instrument yet, and I'm sure our consortium should highlight and use this instrument, because we need to understand what our idea is. We need to understand the terms of starting. We need to see what we are going to have at some kind of intermediary point, and what do we want to target at the end. The system, the real system, which will help to develop our scientific and technical priorities. In the year 2010, the World Health Organization introduced this kind of a lifespan of a medicinal drug. Or otherwise, we can call it a pharmaceutical product. But believe me, this cycle never ends, because during the action, the life cycle of the product, we need to monitor and manage it. When the drug is on the market, has it reached its perfect state? No. This is the information of 1 month ago. There was an article in Lancet, and a very famous medical journal, and it said that there is an anticoagulant which is used in Russia and everywhere, and all of a sudden they found out that that the clinical trials can be of not the top quality. That is why the life cycle of a pharma product never ends. We need to monitor all the time. I have one more example. When develop a pharmaceutical product, a medical drug, we can use this method, but actually we can use it for any product, because any product has a life cycle, lifespan. In our case, it's especially important to assess being ready. Is the production ready? Is the economics ready? Also, we need to assess risks and benefits, efficacy, and for that we have the pharmaceutical. Okay, for this we have the best practice, which is a legal document and is absolutely important. Without it, we cannot guarantee safety, efficacy, or quality of the drug. On this slide, you can see the stages of different actions which need to be taken while investigating a medicinal drug. And as the previous speaker, Professor Poroykov, said, with figures, of a big massive of compounds having more than 18 zeros, 1 billion, 100 millions can be synthesized by chemists. And this is the stage when other specialists can join us, because some chemicals say, we can synthesize thousands of them, millions of them, but not all of them will go to the final stage of compounds. Then we need to assess how many of them are really useful as a substance, as potential substances. And the next stage is active pharmaceutical substances, which ones of them can have an impact on the targets. How many of them can we synthesize and get the outcome we need? Chemicals say 85–90% is good, it's just great. But for medical people and pharmacologists, it cannot be like this. We can have no more than 0.8 mixtures. Some of them will be transformed in the medical drugs in different forms, like creams or plasters or injections. And it can happen that a good active pharmaceutical drug cannot work as being part of a medical drug, of a pill, of a suppositorium or cream. No. So this is a very complex task. Also, we need to understand the target of this product. Why do we need it? What do we need it for? Do we need another diclofenac? There are hundreds of it, and this market is full. Do we need to work out more substances? Maybe not, and this is very important too. Staging is very important here too. Without them, it is impossible that the patient gets the drug and uses it beneficially. We've all faced the pandemic of COVID-19. On the other hand, it was a challenge for us, and it helped us to go on. It pushed us, and we learned a lot from it. You've heard that there were people who were against vaccination, and one of their arguments was as those: it's impossible to work out a vaccine, a drug, so rapidly. But these are the people who don't know the stages, they don't know the requirements. And certainly, Professor Poroykov was right to say that that there is a time which is 10 to 15 drugs years which is important to develop drugs. That's true. But in this case, it was a vaccine which had a platform, some database, and some experience. Further, we could have preclinical trials and clinical trials, and we had enough participants for the clinical trials. It's quite rare for many drugs, so we could do it, and we could use all the opportunities. So all the stages of this pharmaceutical product, which vaccine is, were fulfilled. This is a demonstration of speeding up. Our regulator, our Ministry of Health, registered the drug only for 1 year. And then the developers will have to prove quality, efficacy, and safety of the vaccine. So we don't stop the life cycle. It never stops. And it's true for any product. I've discussed medical drugs with you, but any product should be specified, discussed, explained, and be in accordance with staging, because this is the life cycle of any technology, any product. concluding, I would like to share some positive vision with you. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the Nobel Prize winner for literature, said once, "There is no drug which can treat something happiness can treat." So I vote for the happiness of our communication and collaboration. Thank you for this great optimistic ending. But academician Suchov said that polypragmasia is so frightening, and that was the start of our discussion of today. But I would like to invite Professor Nikolai Szymanowski, and he will tell us practically about combination of different medicines. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Beregavych, for introducing me, and I would like to thank Plekhanov University for the opportunity of speaking here today. All the presentations of today have been not only subtle, but so interesting. But you must be tired still, because it's time. And finalizing, I would like to finalize and to highlight the targets of our consortium. I would like to congratulate and to thank the organizers for this great conference, for the grant you received. You're great, dear colleagues. So speaking about the targets, they're quite complex and difficult. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I would like this collaboration to be practical so that all these great technologies become really part of our routine medical practice. So developing all the issues and data, don't forget what the work of a doctor is. We have systems for decision-taking, but they're only under investigation. They show ways and they give support, but you've gone to the doctors, all of you. Do your doctors use all the technologies? Sometimes they don't, because it's difficult.
Это внедрить, правильно?
Every doctor needs to be trained how to use these novel technologies. So on the one hand, the system is and should be very complex, based on the neural network principles. The brain has a lot of neuron connections, and the final result should be the health of people. And all the factors should be assessed here by our team. So we need to create the system and explain to the doctor, the medical doctor, that they need the system. Do they need it? This is the question I would like to discuss with you. Let me bring about some figures. You know that people have a lot of diseases, sometimes many of them at the same time, which is called comorbidity. And that is why we need polypharmacologic approach, so different drugs. And 52% of patients are like this. And in 28–30%, the treatment is not optional, it's not rational. So I don't want doctors or patients to be scared about the program and the software. Any drug can and is helpful if we use it correctly and in good compounds. 20 years ago, they said that it's really important to to be good studying medicine and clinical pharmacology. No artificial intellect existed at that time. Why is it so good? The human memory is limited. We cannot memorize heaps and loads of information. But this information is part of the science of medical documents. These are guidelines, instructions. Drug interaction takes only 3 pages for every drug on average. Can you memorize all this? Sometimes groups of drugs are there, and any group can have 20 and 30 drugs. It's impossible to memorize all this. So all these data should be accessible for the doctor and for the patient. I would like all these wise computer-based intellects, this AI, are accessible not only for physicians, but for patients, because patients are the most interested ones in their health. Physicians has only 12 minutes for each patient. At least this is how it works at the outpatients clinics here in Russia. And it's not enough to get into detail for every patient, but if the physician has a software with all the data for the patient and even some recommendations, and the doctor should just control the action of the drug and the action in combination. There are a lot of data of not just adverse events and side effects, but fatal ones, really severe side effects. And there are data about the drugs or combination of drugs who can cause it. And in different countries that can be different, highlighting that this is the problem not settled by the industry globally. And you can have a look. The clozapine, for instance, in 58% can end up lethally in the UK. And there are other kinds of drugs, anti-tumor drugs, different drugs. Why do these reactions occur? It's not just the drug, but combination. And our target is to create a system which will prevent this possible mistake, and also we need to include there information of the drug quality, because they can be different. Other parameters like kinetics, physics, whatever. But don't forget that in time of treatment, all this information can change, and some anti-tumor drug can be efficient at the beginning of treatment, and then it can lose its efficacy. So our project attaches major importance to combined use of drugs, their pharmacological, physical, and chemical properties, and their action. I have only 5 minutes left. I'll try to be short. Anti-inflammatory drugs is a very good example. They're used everywhere, and you don't have to get a prescription for that. You just go to a drugstore. But look at possible adverse reactions, which can end up lethally. liver necrosis, and the patient can be saved only through liver transplantation, thrombotic issues, also osteoarthrosis and other joint diseases, so common ones. And 60% of patients with osteoarthritis have 2 or more comorbid diseases. And sometimes classic therapy becomes inadequate for this kind of patients with comorbidities. So I'd like to highlight not just adverse events, but good side effects, which is a result of synergy. Let's look about the prospect. How can we improve efficacy of the therapy? We can create new molecular, and also we can get more combinations and compounds. And look at the expenditures. We can have less of them, and we can have less of adverse events. Less money, less time, but the same kind of efficacy. A good example how good combination, good compound can improve the action of ibuprofen. It's a good example here, but certainly it's a broader topic. In our work, we're going to work using neural network, because action of drugs can be subsequential parallel. They can have synergy. They can be antagonists. They can be patronizing or enhancing the effect of each other. All this should be assessed in combination. Can you imagine that? To study any combination, a clinical trial has to be fulfilled. And computer-based technologies and modeling can be helpful here. Cell culture we can take from an individual patient, and we can test using it possible combination and correlation of the drugs. We can classify synergy, we can study toxicity, efficacy. All this can be studied on the cellular level, and then it can model it for a human. So combining drugs, we can find out key priorities and key factors which are important for us to increase efficacy and to reduce adverse events. For taking the best decision, one more issue is important. Accessibility is vital here. Accessibility of big data. And my colleagues have stated already, for the medical team, it's especially important that it's not only one person who takes the decision, but a team. A clinical pharmacologist needs to be there, cardiologist sometimes, it's very important that different specialists work together, because cardiologists know everything about the heart, vascular surgeons about the vessels, and the data and the technologies help to find the best solutions. So the doctor needs to learn how to use it. It should be easy and efficient. And this is our target. Thank you so very much. And I would like to thank Professor Nikolai Szymanowski. So, believe me, classical education at the university is important because it's the basics. I started more than 50 years ago, but that was the fundament I still use today. So in other words, there are international companies, pharma companies, and presses. New drugs are the best ones. And Professor Szymanowski says, and what about their combination? What about adverse events, side effects? All of us do not just create softwares, but we make books and we give lectures based at what we know. And we know the generics because we know everything about them. And it's easier to work with them because we know everything about them. And what about new drugs? Of 20 new substances on the market, more than half of them are stopped to be used 1 or 2 years later because of their adverse events or being inefficient. Because our target is not just to find out some new things, but to save our patients. And this is what really matters and should be considered. And the new curriculum, Professor Szymanowski said, is what we're going to work on so that they are useful and efficient. Thank you. Dear colleagues, I would like to end our workshop, our session, on an optimistic note too. In 40 years, we live longer, 15 years longer, and the quality of life has improved too. I'm 60, and I remember my parents, they were much weaker. They wanted to be pensioners, and I still work. So our medicine, our pharma, helps us to have a long life and a quality life. And this is what matters. When we thought about our session of today together with Professor Sergei Valenti, the lecturers we selected really thoroughly because we wanted to share with you this life cycle. How do we think and find new molecules? And then Natalia Petigorska said that it's not so easy, and then the other professor said that we cannot do too enthusiastic, but Professor Szymanowski said, but it's important. So we're going to have a consortium of about 15 departments. We've underwent to create this expert team, like an umbrella project, to unite the knowledge and information to help the doctors and the patients, being their instrument. And this is truly important, and this work, I'm sure, will be beneficial for the specialists who work, for the doctors, and for the whole population. And dear colleagues, you are all patients. Don't worry, we'll find these solutions, and we'll find a way to treat each and every of you. I'm a moderator here, but I would like to thank Professor Sergei Valenti, who's launched everything. So could you please conclude our session? Dear colleagues, I would like to thank you for your presentations, and we have a message from the Netherlands. 100 teraflops is not enough, 10 is not enough, 100 is better. This is what we get from the Netherlands. So thank you. And this is the start of the discussion. I would like to thank you once again for being here. I hope it's been not boring for you. I liked your eyes and your attention. I would like to thank everyone. Our dear moderator, Professor Valery Beregovych, you're really great. 2 hours, and you're so precise. You're just the best moderator ever. So, students of the Foresight department, do you know why you have this kind of training courses? It's not Nika you are going to do, but also all this stuff. This is strategic issue our university will deal with, and will go on together with you, dear students. I would like to ask Svetlana, because I'm the organizer only of this session, and Svetlana is the organizer of everything. Dear participants, dear academicians, I'm too far away from medicine. Do you ever fall ill? Well, yes, sometimes I do. But I listened to each and every presentation by you with such attention. I was really involved. I was really happy. And thank you for being so clear. Thank you for using the easy language, not being too medical and too scientific, because this is what we all do. This is what is close to all of us, and this is what we all are doing today. I'm here because this forum is my responsibility, but I'm really happy to be present at your session, and I would like to thank once again each of you. You are very busy people, but you find time to share with us different approaches. I have a different approach now for using drugs for treatment. I've changed my approach for administration of medical drugs. Thank you so very much. So we're finalizing. Thank you once again, all of you. I hope it's the start of our long way, our great future. Thank you.